I've been real busy, so I haven't had much time to comment on this whole Freddie Gray situation and the riots in Baltimore. I've been working on a new novel. I just got through finishing it, and I was really busy. I'm doing, getting books ready and stuff. So now I have about a moment so I can sit down and really talk about this whole situation. And I'm not going to really discuss what happened with Freddie Gray, but what I want to talk about is the response that these Negroes participated in to the whole Freddie Gray situation. Now, you've heard me say in constant videos, the definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing and expecting a different result. When we look at the riots in Baltimore, it's, again, insanity because if we look at the historical context of all of this rioting, what does it accomplish? What goal does it accomplish, really? I mean, they rioted in Watts in the 1960s. They rioted in Newark. They rioted in they rioted in Chicago, I think, or someplace like that. They rioted in L.A. in 1992 when the Rodney King verdict came down. I remember those Rodney King riots because my graduation day here in New York was the exact. They were rioting when I was graduating high school here in New York. That day I was graduating, they were still rioting in L.A. And before then, they had the Crown Heights riots, where they rioted over the death of Gavin Cato here in New York. And just recently, we had a riot in Ferguson, Missouri, over the death of Michael Brown. And now we have another riot here in Baltimore, almost 6 months to a year apart, um, over the death of Freddie Gray. And I look at the black community, and again, the definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing and expecting a different result. How does rioting get justice for these dead black men? That's the question people need to ask if they were thinking critically. But because most Negroes don't think critically and they only think emotionally, they think rioting, is going to do something. Looting and rioting pretty much hurt black people more in the long than they do in the short. When you look at most of the communities that, in the aftermath of those riots, all the communities I talked about, most of the businesses left those communities. And there was a big economic hole. So things actually got worse for people afterward. Because all the businesses that got looted and destroyed, those business owners, what they said was, I don't want to deal with these Negroes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pack up my business and I'm going to take it elsewhere, or I'm just going to close it up completely and move on. And this is what happened in each case with each riot. And this Negro, he doesn't think that, rioting isn't going to solve anything. And they only come out to riot, and it's like it doesn't solve anything, and it's not a plan of action. It really shows how dysfunctional many of these Negroes are. They have not really set a plan or plan of action or even set a set of goals for what they want to do. There's really no leadership in the black community. It pretty much shows by the behaviors that many of these Negroes have been participating in over the last 6 or 7 years. I mean, ever since the death of Trayvon Martin a couple of years ago, I have not seen a real direction. I mean, if you really wanted to get this Black Lives Matter initiative galvanized, you would think there would be leaders at the forefront, black men especially leading at the forefront, because it's black men's lives which are the ones that you want to say that matters. But I don't see any black men, taking a leadership role in their own communities to make that statement. At every protest, I always see a bunch of black women or some older senior citizen black men or some old civil rights dinosaurs making these statements, but I don't see any young black men making these statements. And that's very telling about how little black men's lives matter to other black men. And when you really look at the big picture, this is why every one of these movements has pretty much stalled after every one of these black men have been killed. They don't take the lead in their own cause. They don't take the lead in their own movements. I mean, I just look at it and it's just there's no leadership whatsoever. Like right here in New York with the case of Eric Garner, the whole thing has pretty much died out because again nobody has really set a goal. And I look at this Freddie Gray situation, it's turning into the same type of dysfunctional quagmire because, again, the black males just don't know how to lead and they don't know how to set goals for their cause. I mean, I look again with the Eric Garner thing situation. This officer is still collecting a paycheck almost 1 year later after all of the hoopla and the controversy for all the marching and protesting. This man is still adding funds to his pension fund, and he's still collecting a check. He's still working. And this is even after having two federal civil rights lawsuits on his record, and this man is still has a job. And the ultimate goal really should have been, one of them should have been to get this man off the police force. But Negro is so caught up in the words of the rhetoric of an Al Sharpton or Louis Farrakhan or one of these other, black civil rights leaders that they don't think, we need to set some goals, that the word justice just isn't enough. In order to get to the justice, so-called the justice, you have to have a set of goals. And you have to set a set of goals. And one of the goals that you should have is to get this man terminated from his job so that he won't do this to anyone again, and so that there will be a sense of accountability from the community. But your Negro again is very emotional and very irrational, and he does not think long term. He just gets caught up in slogans and caught up in rhetoric, and what happens is he doesn't really think, of a long term set of goals, like getting this rogue officer terminated. Again, this man had two federal civil rights lawsuits against him, and he chokes out Eric Garner, and he gets no indictment, and no one thinks to get this man terminated from his job, even though your mayor and police commissioner both said it looks like a chokehold. This man is still collecting a paycheck, and a Negro does not have a plan of action set at all. And this is why, again, these things just keep happening, and they keep happening at a more rapid pace. It's like a vicious cycle, just it keeps repeating itself, because again, definition of insanity is doing the exact same things and expecting a different result, and no one has a plan for what they want to do. Now, I've heard some other silliness from one of these civil rights armchair Negroes or one of these other black leaders. They were talking about Crown Heights. I was watching the news, and he was talking about black rage. And I sat there and I said to myself, this is an excuse. I mean, you talk about black rage, you talk about black frustration, because they say most of the rioters were 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. How does this have to do with black rage? This makes no sense to me. This is not a case of black rage. This is a case of, a total decline in the family and, a total decline of leadership in the black community. And that's what it looked like to me, because people were using the Freddie Gray situation as an excuse to riot. I mean, they were tearing up their own neighborhoods because people say that these people were frustrated and angry. And, I look at it as people with no direction and no focus. When you look at these kids, they had no direction, they had no focus, and that comes from a breakdown of the home. And if we look at the home, who's running the home? I'm not even gonna say who's running the home, but this is what happens when your family unit has deteriorated, and this is what happens when there is no leadership from God's leader. And who is God's leader? The black man. He's been MIA, absolutely absent, and he's been pretty much gone. And because he's been gone, this is why everything is deteriorating with no goals in mind. I mean, people sitting here marching and protesting, going round and around, because there is no black man to do God's work and be God's leader. And they're just going around and around, marching and protesting, talking about justice, but not setting any defined goals or setting a defined direction. Because again, if this whole Black Lives Matter thing was to build up some traction, the only way it can build up traction is for black men to start setting the goals for themselves and taking the lead of their own movement. But as long as others are speaking for the black man, nothing's going to get done. And when I look at the black community, there is no leadership there at all, just none. And this is why things have been deteriorating. I mean, if this situation in Baltimore, if people really looked at it, I mean, what are you marching and protesting for? I mean, your black president and your black attorney general pretty much made a statement that black lives don't matter to them by the cases of George Zimmerman and what is it, Darren Wilson. Now, if they really wanted to make that statement, they would have done it then. And President Obama's statements, again, pretty much tell this Negro that black lives don't matter to him. He has just pretty much said it again. Um, he doesn't really, his response really is this: I'm just going to bring in the National Guard and I'm going to shut these Negroes down. He does not care. So for all the marching and protesting, your black president has pretty much shown he doesn't care. And this is what these Negroes don't understand. They have to do things a little differently because again, the marching and protesting that worked 50 years ago, 60 years ago. It doesn't work today. And it's time for some new approaches and it's time for a new direction. And the problem with the black community is they keep thinking that doing the exact same thing is going to lead to a different result. We've been doing this for 50 years and this isn't working anymore. And the problem is that black men from the previous generation, didn't do a good job of teaching this generation. And now everybody's pretty much lost. And when the marching and protesting doesn't work, they go to rioting. And some of them are just going to go riot anyway. And the sad part is they tear up their own businesses in their own community. And eventually, they're going to be the ones who are more worse for the wear because once those businesses leave, their community is going to wind up that much poorer because you just don't have anything in your own community. A lot of times, what black people do is they tear up every business, including the black-owned ones, and then those people just pack up and leave the community. And they have the money to leave, and they go, I just don't want to deal with these Negroes anymore. I wanted to support black people, but I don't want to deal with these Negroes anymore. They're a bunch of savages. And Negroes pretty much proved their point. And that's sad because I look at this whole situation and people talking about they're just going around in circles. I mean, like a couple of years, well, not a couple of years, a couple of weeks ago, there was a bunch of people here in New York who were going to go march for Freddie Gray. They were going to march all the way to Washington. I sat there and said to myself, this is the second or third march on Washington, excuse me, sinuses, that we've had. And yet, you don't see that you've marched for the third or fourth time. How is this going to get justice for anyone? Now, some of these old civil rights guys will sit there and say that this is going to get attention for your cause, but I sit there and say there comes a point where people start becoming apathetic because they go, every week there's a march and a protest, so they learn to tune it out. Now, unless you have a set of goals set for your plant for things, nothing's going to change. And this is the big problem with the Negro. He continued to do the exact same things in the hopes of getting a different result. He doesn't even understand that these approaches are pretty much obsolete and they're not going to work because what these civil rights dinosaurs are thinking is that they're going to get some crumbs from the table by having these marches and protesters, but nobody cares anymore. That you're not showing a reason for anyone to care, and that's the big problem. Because when you do a different approach, like a boycott of all the businesses by saying that, look, I'm not safe, so I can't go to the movies. I'm not safe from police brutality, so I can't go shopping. I'm not safe, so I have to stay home on Saturday night. I can't go to the restaurants. I can't go to the clubs. That's a statement you could make, but no, Negro doesn't have the resolve or the backbone, to make that statement. Because what he's going to do is say, I need those Air Jordans. I need to impress this light-skinned woman. I need the social currency. I need these things more than my own life. Again, proving that a black life doesn't matter to him. Now, if his life had value to him, you know what he would do? He would say, look, I'm tired of being profiled in these stores. I'm tired of being harassed. I'm tired of being bullied. I'm tired of police brutality. I don't feel safe. So you know what? I'm going to keep all this money that I would have spent with these merchants in my pocket. And once I keep this money in my pocket, I'm going to keep it there because I don't feel safe going out. And until you guys do something about this police brutality and this racial profiling, I'm not going shopping. And you know what would have happened if we were to make that statement and, set that as the cause for our boycott? It would have had a big impact because big business does not like to lose money. Small business does not like to lose money. And what people do by staying home is sending a statement saying that, look, if the black life doesn't matter, then you can't get the black dollar. And this is the campaign the Negro will not take because again, has no resolve, has no discipline. Instead, they'd rather just march and protest. And marching and protesting, yeah, it's cathartic. It makes you feel good, but it doesn't help anybody grow. It doesn't help anything change because here's the whole thing. People have already seen this before. They've already heard it before, and their ears have become closed to it. In order to have a statement, make a statement, you have to use economic power to get political power. And Negro just doesn't understand that. He's still trying to play these shuck and jive, blame and shame games from the 1960s and playing with a 1960s civil rights playbook when it's time to do something new. And it's time to take some economic action. It's time to use some, try to talk to some of these congressmen and political people and try to get a platform set up. And really, one of the big problems the Negro has is he doesn't want to set up a political platform. And we really have to do that. And when I look at the situations like Freddie Gray and all these other black men like Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, it's just sad to me. And it's sad because our black men should be the ones at the forefront of this cause. They should be the ones leading the cause. They should be the ones setting up the platform and the ones setting the goals. And they're not. And when you look at the media, because I'm going to touch on some other subjects here, it's just not there. I mean, again, the Black Lives Matter thing really disturbs me because again, like David Carroll said in one of his videos, black life only matters when it's taken by a white cop or a non-black person. And it's pretty much showed with this whole Freddie Gray, the Trayvon Martins, the Michael Browns, because I thought about that here in New York. We had this situation. It was a very, very warm day about a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Hottest day of the year was about 80 degrees. It was a Saturday. We had 13 shootings, and not no, and they were black, almost all black on black shootings. One of them I know was coming out of a baby shower, but we didn't hear anything from these black leaders. Mostly, we didn't hear anything from any Al Sharptons or any of these National Action Network, NAACP. That was another telling statement to me. If Black Lives Matter, why wasn't anybody out here when these black people were shooting other black people? Why is it everybody wants to march and protest over just this one black man who was killed by white police officers? Why isn't it that we are trying to do something about this? Because again, this black on black crime has been going on for about 25, 26 years as I've seen it. And the homicide rate among black men has not changed in 25, 26 years. I mean, number one killer of black men isn't heart disease or cancer, it's other black men. But this flies over the Negro's head. He's still talking about going to get justice for a black man killed by a white man, but he won't try to get justice for the black man killed by other black men in his community. And he doesn't see how it all ties into the whole Black Lives Matter thing, because again, if a black life mattered in the state of this black man killed by this white police officer or this non-black person, it should have the same value as a life taken by this other black man. And this is the standard that we as black men need to establish for ourselves. In order for this black man's life to matter, it has to matter not only when it's taken by this white person, it has to be mattered when it's taken by a black person. And this is something that, it flies over people's heads. And when they had the news conference talking about these 13 shootings in one day, because there were 13 shootings in one day here in New York, on the warmest day of the year, it's 80 degrees, here came the pro-blacks, talking about how we need more programs, how we need more jobs, and all this other stuff. When how is that going to help anything? They were looking to make themselves rich at the expense of the black community. They really weren't thinking about, dealing with this violence in a constructive manner, which is really going after this thug culture, dealing with the issues in this home, because having an after-school program does not deal with the issues in many of these dysfunctional homes. Dealing with giving people a job when their mind is messed up, when they're not job ready, really isn't going to change anything. You have to fix the home and the home values if you want to really start building towards change. And the home, and the black home, is one of the most dysfunctional environments I have ever seen. And this is why everything has been deteriorating. And this is why you have riots and stuff. is because this home has pretty much been falling apart. I mean, I looked at several other news reels where they talked about this single mother who was sitting there saying that she pulled her son out of the riot, but they never really addressed the issue that why this is the reason that there's a problem, because there's no father in the home. He's the only son, and he has no direction. He has no male leadership in his life, and there's a reason why he was right out there in those riots, because again, he had no male role models to pattern after, and his mother sadly further emasculated him by showing that he can't even lead himself. And that pretty much showed to me right there. He can't even lead himself. He's got to be a follower. And that's one of the big problems with this Negro male, is that he can't lead himself. He doesn't know how to be a leader. He doesn't know how to be a leader the way God made him to be a leader and the head of the family. He's been totally emasculated, and he's been socially engineered to become a follower. And this is why, none of his movements ever gain steam, and never, because he doesn't understand what leadership is. Leadership means you're going to have to stand up for yourself. You're going to have to stand up in spite of all the social criticism, in spite of all the peer pressure, in spite of family. You're going to have to stand on your position, and you're going to have to stand on it no matter what. But this Negro male won't do that. The minute somebody says something is unpopular or somebody disagrees with it, he's the first one to concede it. Or especially if a female comes up and says, I don't agree with your position, he's the first one to start backing down. And that pretty much shows people why they shouldn't take him seriously, because if he wanted his Black Lives Matter campaign to mean something, he would be again at the forefront, and no matter what anybody said to him, he would be the first one to speak on his own movement and his own cause. Because again, in order to show that your life matters, black man's life matters, he has to take the lead. He has to be the one at the forefront. He has to be the one who takes charge of his movement. No matter what criticism comes at him, no matter what personal people are attacking him, he has to be able to not only one stand on his position, but he has to be able to defend his position. And your Negro male just doesn't know how to do that. And when I looked at that boy who was at the riots, I saw the weakness of your Negro male. I saw, a follower, a weak man who was being controlled by his mother, and will be later on be controlled by another woman. Because this is what the sad state of affairs with black men is that they do everything to please their woman. They never take a leadership role of their own and say, you know what, I need to do what's right for me. I need to put me first. I need to meet my goals. Because again, this has not been modeled for him, because most of the men in his community are some of the weakest, most cowardly in the community. Because again, this is what I saw when I did the video for Ghetto Gaggers, when I offered Negro's solution to the whole problem. They went right back to the black woman. They put it on the black woman. And everything that they did was about not offending this black woman. And when you look at the Negro community, everything is about never offending her, never hurting her feelings. And that's really a weak position, because again, God made you to be the leader. And here you are submitting to the woman. And this is a big problem with this Negro male. And another situation that I saw, and I know this doesn't relate to the full Freddie Gray thing, is when I saw these two women out in some parking lot fighting over a parking space. There was a video of one woman beating another woman over a parking space. But it also ties into my thesis here about this weak black man and why, his life doesn't matter. This pretty much, when you see that video and you see from a panoramic view, when you see the full picture of that video, you see these two women beating the crap out of each other over a parking space. And you see the boyfriend or the husband, he's standing to the side in the distance. He's not being a leader and saying, I'm going to break this up. This is my woman. I love her. I respect her. I don't want my woman acting this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this up. No, he's standing to the side and watching this carnage happen. And if you look at the other scene in the distance, you see the children in this video. You see the children in this distance. And you'll see this son just standing there. And what's wrong with this picture? You see the man setting a model for weakness, because he's standing there, he's not breaking it up. You see the son on the other side, and he's learning the model for manhood from him. And the model for manhood from him, he's learning, is don't be the leader, that the woman is the leader of the situation. And when the two women are beating each other up, you just sit there and you passively just stand there. And this is the model that this man is setting for his son and his children, is that he's not going to be a leader. And this is the big problem with black men, is that nobody wants to take a lead in their own community. Now, I've said this about a dozen times in this video. I've said it a dozen times in other videos. But this is the sad state of affairs if you're a black man. Is that he wants everybody to see him and take him seriously, but he doesn't want to take any action that makes you take him seriously. He's basically a coward. He's basically weak. And because he does not want to be a leader, what he does is he doesn't know how to do anything. He doesn't know how to navigate anything. And when you have situations that turns into riots, it's because people don't have any life skills or social skills to know how to build a platform or how to communicate a platform to others. And this is what has been happening with this Negro, I say, for about 50 years. He has no idea of how to build that platform or to, set that set of goals of what he wants in it for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 20 years. He doesn't have the brain or even the backbone to say, look, this is what I want. This is what I want for my community. This is the direction I want to take my community in. These are the goals I want to set for my community. He doesn't want to do that, again, because that means taking responsibility. And again, why does your Negro not want to take responsibility? Because he believes the victim is a position of power. And this is why your codependent Negro would rather riot in the street and get some crumbs from the table from some liberals through a government program or a government job training program or some other silliness, rather than say, we're going to set a set of goals for our community, set some standards for our community regarding behavior, and, set a direction for where we want to take the black race for the next 25 years and the next 50 years. Because this is why your black community has been going backwards. Because we sit here and we go back and forth with the same people instead of saying, look, we need to take the lead, we need to put ourselves first. Because again, this whole Black Lives Matter thing really needs to be a black men's movement. But your black man refuses to take the lead in his own community. And he refuses to set a direction and set a course. His whole living reason for being now usually is this black woman. And he thinks that if he pleases this black woman, he will be alright. But when we look at the black community, we see that he's not okay at all. We see that he is in a worse state than he ever was because, again, the natural order that God established is pretty much backwards, and that's why everything is going backwards, because the man is letting the woman lead instead of leading himself. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. I have a lot of great books on Amazon.com. You can just click the link in the description box. Many are on Kindle Unlimited, so if you have Amazon Prime, you can just borrow them for free. Again, that's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.